Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Lobby and Mary Kay Cabot with you here on a Monday, recording this about 3 o'clock. A Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast with questions from our Football Insider subscribers. Of course, minicamp is over. We are into this break here between now and training camp, but there is still a ton to talk about with this football team, Mary Kay. And I actually want to start with this question, and this is something that kind of goes along with something Todd had mentioned when we talked to him on Thursday, Todd Monken. It comes from Mr. A in Cleveland. Hey, Mary Kay, do you believe Todd Monken will get the best from his players because of his old school, no nonsense style? It seemed like there were a lot of players on the exercise bikes the past few years.
I do think that Todd will get plenty out of his players with his style, and not just because he's old school, but because he's a warm guy. I mean, you know what you're going to get from Todd. He's going to get in your face and tell you what he thinks, but he's also going to embrace you. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think the players are really, really going to like that about him. I think there's going to be a very different vibe on the team this year in general, just in terms of the tight knit bond, the ability to express yourself, the ability to express your emotions, and just to be closer together as a family unit. I really feel that. Kevin was consistent. He was smart. He was so many things, but he wasn't someone that you would describe as warm, right? I mean, even the interactions that you've seen Shador have with Todd Monken, they're embracing, they're laughing. He's like that with everybody. He's a guy's guy. He's a football junkie. He loves people, and he's just a very, very engaging personality. And I think that he's going to get the most out of people that way. I think Mike Rutenberg is that way. And then I also think Jared Verse is that way. So I think we're going to have a lot more warm and fuzzy feelings about each other than we have in the past.
Well, and I also think too with Todd, guys are just gonna know where they stand. Like, and I think players appreciate that, good or bad. I think they at least appreciate kind of knowing like this is what it is. And Todd's not gonna sugarcoat stuff, and he's not gonna, he's gonna do his best. He always talks about player development. He's gonna do his best to develop guys and bring the best out of them. But I think guys are gonna sort of know where they stand, and I think that matters a lot too. So we've talked about this a little before. I think this is sort of what this football team needs right now. They just need someone to come in and kind of, like you said, he's a football junkie. It's all he cares about. It's just football. And I think with Todd, 60 years old, this is his one shot. He's not going to mess it up here. Like, he's going to do everything he can to make sure it works out. And I just think this is what this football team needs right now. Back in 2020, I think they needed a guy like Kevin Stefanski who was just consistent and every day the same. I think with Todd, they need a little bit of a kick here, a guy that's going to say, he said there's no veteran days off this training camp. So it is going to look different over the summer. And I think this team kind of needs somebody to come in and say, like, we haven't done anything yet. This is what it's going to take to start winning football games. So this is how we're going to do it.
Yes, absolutely 100%. I think that he will kick them when they need to be kicked. He'll yell at them. We hear him screaming during practice a lot. But by the same token, he will let you know exactly what you're doing right. And he will boost these guys up. So I think that he's going to have a very players coach mentality about him. And I do think that the players are going to enjoy playing for someone who shows so much emotion. I just think it's going to be the culture and the vibe that this football team needs right now. And the other thing is the fact that he's almost like a father figure in some ways. It's a very young football team. And he does bring sort of that fatherly, curmudgeonly, older guy type of vibe. And so for this team at this time, I do think that an older coach was probably the wise decision as opposed to some of the really young guys that they were interviewing.
Yeah, I almost there's almost like a little bit of a Kurt Signetti vibe. He's a different personality. Like, Kurt's that guy that's going to win a national title and not smile or anything. I mean, Todd is going to, I think, enjoy the wins and enjoy, he's going to be expressive and I think he's going to show emotion. But like, there is a little bit of that, he's an older coach. He's kind of getting his shot, and like he's gonna do things the way he wants to do them. Now, the flip side of this is, are we going to be sitting here in the middle of October and a bunch of guys are hurt? And are we going to say like, well, maybe that training camp was a little too hard, maybe pushed them a little too hard? But I still think this is. First of all, I don't think the old Todd Haley line, right? You can't live in your fears. So I think this. I think these guys need to be out there playing football, and you know, what did Mason Graham say? The best way to get better at football is to play football. And I just think, again, this is what this team needs right now is someone that's going to make them be out there for 2.5 hours in the heat, in pads, like playing football and maximizing every on field minute that they can have. And I think it'll work with a young team. If this were a really veteran group, it might not work as well. But in part because this team is so young, I think it can work.
Right. And I think the other key point here is the fact that he just spent 3 years in Baltimore with one of the best organizations in football from top to bottom, right? Ozzie Newsome, all the great things going on over there, learning from John Harbaugh, their excellent coaching staff, just the organization itself is consistent, professional, well run. And he learned so much on that job in Baltimore, coming off of his years with Kirby Smart and winning national championships at Georgia. So he's a completely different football coach than the one that was on the Browns' doorstep here as offensive coordinator in 2019. Some of his most valuable years in learning how to become an NFL head coach happened after he left here in 2019. So I think that was probably a blessing for him to be here with Freddie, to have that thing blow up, because then he got to go be with Kirby Smart, win national championships. That brought him back to the NFL with John Harbaugh. Those two guys, great influences on his career. And now he knows how to do things. So if he is saying no veteran days off, these guys are going to be out here, that's probably something that John Harbaugh did, and it worked really well for them. So he's got a wonderful role model that he's bringing all that Harbaugh wisdom here. So it's almost like the next best thing for the Browns to have somebody who just worked under John Harbaugh, learned everything from him, and brought all of that professionalism and wisdom here.
Yeah, and like the other thing is we're not sitting out there watching practices that are disjointed, like they don't know what they're doing period to period. I mean, these practices, they pack a lot in, and there's a real plan in each of these practices. And even day to day, they look different. That Thursday practice we watched and obviously that was a getaway day, so it's naturally going to be different. But that Thursday practice was different than the ones we watched on Tuesday and Wednesday, but there was still a purpose to everything they were doing. And there was, like with Freddie, it was just completely disjointed and weird and disorganized. And it's not like that with Todd. And I think that's important too. Just this idea of, yes, these practices are long and they're physical and they're tough, but there's a purpose to everything they're doing.
Absolutely, 100%. They're very, very efficient. And once again, uh, just say, for instance, that the Browns had seen something in Todd in 2019 and said, you know what, let's give this guy a chance back then. It wouldn't have worked. It would not have worked. I really think he needed to go through what he did at those two stops and figure all of that stuff out. Because, I mean, he went from a disorganized, inefficient Freddie to completely organized Kirby Smart and John Harbaugh. And he quotes those guys, right? Especially John Harbaugh. And I just think that that's what we're seeing out on the field. We're seeing things the way they did them in Baltimore. And it's been a pretty good recipe for success. And I think the Browns are very, very lucky to have not only him, but he brought over a lot of his offensive staff. So there's sort of the Baltimore way going on. And that has resulted in plenty of AFC North championships over the last how many ever years, and plenty of playoff runs and double digit victories. And you can't argue with that.
Okay, let's get to a question that you did a little reporting on this over the weekend and put up a post. I think it was on Sunday. It comes from Mavro in Cbus. He mentioned Mason Graham in this. I'm going to take Mason out of the question and throw someone else in. Hey, Mary Kay, how concerning was it to you that Harold Fannin, Grant Delpit, and Denzel Ward all missed work during minicamp?
Not a concern, because I know kind of what's going on with those guys. And as you mentioned, Dan, I wrote about it in my Sunday Insider. Harold Fannin is coming off of an injury. Uh, Nobody's being specific about that right now because Todd Monken, probably something that he also learned from John Harbaugh, he doesn't want to let on too much about injuries, or maybe he learned that from Kirby Smart. Not really sure, but he doesn't want to get very specific about injuries, and you don't have to right now. So why should he? But Harold is coming off of an injury, and it prevented him from practicing. This is not a contract thing with him at all, and he should be ready for training camp. And if he's not 100% ready for training camp, then he'll ramp up during camp. So he'll be ready to go and he'll be fine. And then when you move on to Denzel and Grant, here's the thing I think to remember about Grant for anybody that still thinks that this was a contract hold in. It's not a contract issue for Grant, not a contract issue for Denzel. Grant showed up for voluntary OTAs, even though he has some kind of a tweak of some sort, a minor tweak. And he was there helping guys out, mentoring, meeting his coach, having a great attitude. You don't do that if you're disgruntled. If you don't see light at the end of the tunnel and you're upset about the way things are going as you head into the final year of your contract, you are not showing up for voluntary OTAs just to be nice and help out. That's not how that works. So we can forget about that speculation. It's not true. He had a tremendous attitude inside the building. We saw him out on the practice field, on the sidelines, joking around with people, helping guys. So this is not that at all. And then same thing with Denzel. Denzel has something that would have not prevented him from practicing in a regular in-season practice, but not something worth trying to put yourself at risk for in a meaningless minicamp. So those guys will be ready to go. Not a concern for any of those three guys.
Yeah, the Fannin thing was the fact that that actually got legs over the weekend. Pro Football Talk picked up just a little snippet out of an article that Fannin wasn't practicing. Like, I don't know, they can't even touch his contract until after next year. Like they can't even do anything with it till after year 3. So like I don't understand why that got picked up nationally and got momentum. But the Delpit thing, I think a lot of people maybe, and I'm sort of in this camp a little bit, feel a little burnt by the Myles Garrett situation, where like there were some signs and there were some things that were like, huh, that's a little bit off. And then all of a sudden on June 1st, Myles Garrett's an LA Ram. And so I think people are maybe still a little bit burnt by that. But I do just keep coming back to this idea of if it were a hold in, like a true, and he probably does want a new contract, but if it were a true hold in, why did he show up for OTAs? Like that's the
Right.
part of it that makes me say I just don't know that I'm willing to quite go that far with Grant Delpit, even though he wasn't participating in drills and in minicamp. So, I mean, I guess if we get into training camp and it's still ongoing, then maybe it becomes a topic. But I just think this is a situation of Todd Monken and the Browns not helping themselves and being so adamant about not communicating about this injury, or just the way Todd answered those questions the day he got asked about it. Like, just a little bit of communication. I know you don't want to talk about injuries, but just a little bit of like, hey, no, look, he's just dealing with something. We're not going to get specific, but he's just dealing, whatever he could have said. I think this is where they kind of get hurt a little bit by a lack of communication.
Right. And I think the thing that gave us a good idea that Grant was not disgruntled and that this was not a hold in was an answer that we got from Ephraim Banda, the safeties coach, where he raved about how Grant was in there, what his attitude was like, his mentoring, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, again, that's not stuff that you do if you're a disgruntled player. You do what Amari Cooper did when he was a disgruntled player, and that was you just don't show up. You don't show up. And if again, if you do show up, and it's very rare to do a hold in. We've seen Micah Parsons kind of do a hold in. We saw Kareem Hunt do a hold in back in the day, but it's pretty rare to do a hold in. Usually you just either don't show up or whatever the case may be. But this is definitely not a hold in. He's in good standing. His attitude is great, and the Browns like him. So I would expect that, you know, that it will be smooth sailing as we move forward. And I don't think there's anything to worry about whatsoever.
And then with Ward, obviously, that's the one that's a little more, I think, open to speculation just because he wasn't at OTAs at all. And of course, look, he said don't read into it at his camp. He's like, I know people will read into it. They shouldn't. We're seeing some contracts come out with cornerbacks. Could Denzel go to the Browns and be like, hey, I want a pay raise? But that's not what he's doing in this case.
No, that is not what he's doing. Once again, I think that there was probably some minor issue that we don't know about and that there's no reason for anybody to tell us about it now. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about that when training camp starts or maybe when the season starts. I don't know. But there was something, again, something minor going on with him. But once again, he's got a great attitude. I loved it when you guys talked to him at his celebrity softball game, and he said, "You're either with us or against us." He's a Cleveland native. He wants to be here, and I'm happy that he wants to be here because you don't find a better human being than Denzel Ward. He's a great guy. He's great for the team. And here's something that I do believe is in short supply on this football team this year. And I think it could come back to haunt them a little bit. And I actually think they should try to correct it in some way if they can. They skewed so far to young that they don't have one of those real veteran sage leaders in every single room that you like to have. And maybe for the most part, they feel good about the leaders that they have in each room, but they don't have a whole bunch of seasoned veterans that grab a young guy by the neck and say, "No, that's not how we do things." Right? I mean, I've seen situations over the years, like when Baker Mayfield spoke out of turn after Miles whacked Mason Rudolph over the head with the helmet, and Baker went on Fox and said things that weren't team building on national television, and a couple of veterans just took him aside and chewed him out for that. And I don't see a whole bunch of those kind of guys on the team right now. So some of these younger guys or some of these newer guys are going to have to step up and fill that leadership void because you don't have Miles Garrett around anymore, even though he wasn't necessarily a great vocal leader. He was still a leader. You don't have Joel Bitonio, who was a great leader. You don't have some of the other guys on the offensive line. Wyatt Teller was a leader in his own right. And just a lot of those guys are gone. And so you really need to have some of those guys. And Denzel is one of them. And he's gotten better over the years. He's matured. He's grown. And I really do believe, that he's going to go a long way this year towards just being maybe almost the face and voice of the defense or one of them.
Yeah, and I think you have to be cautious too if you ever made a decision to move on from Denzel. Like you have to look at the talent that he brings, right? It's hard to find a Denzel Ward. And this is the discussion with Miles Garrett too, right? You decide to trade Miles Garrett and Andrew Berry has done his media tour and he told us too, like the goal was to get Jared Verse back. And Jared Verse is a good player. He's not Miles Garrett, but at least you got a good player back. And with Denzel Ward, right, like at some point you have to account for you'd be giving up a really good player who wants to be here in this case, like a player who wants to be a Cleveland Brown. You'd be giving that up. Are you doing that just for a bunch of more draft picks? Like you already have a bunch of draft picks. Are you doing that for more draft picks? Are you getting a player back who can sort of at least partially fill that void that Denzel Ward left? Maybe you are, again, like the Jared Verse situation. Like you also have to account for the fact of if you trade Denzel Ward, well, now your corners are Tyson Campbell and Miles Harden, and like it creates a deficit on your roster. So I would be careful about even any if there were some sort of impasse here or something, I would be careful about just giving up on Denzel Ward.
And I still think that they want to win more than 5 games this year. I still think that they are going to be trying to win football games. At least that is the current philosophy. Maybe that will change. Maybe they'll decide, you know what, let's see what Shador has, and if he can win for us, great. If he is in developmental mode for another 8, 9, 10 games, that's okay too. Not really sure where that's going at, but I really do believe at this point in time, they still want to try to win as many games as they can, let the chips fall where they may, and see what happens, because I think they feel good about what they have on that offense. They've got some weapons on that offense. They're very young, but there are enough weapons. There should be enough weapons to score some points. There should be enough weapons there to try to get to 22 points a game or 23 points a game if your defense can continue to hold it down.
Okay, let's move on to this question. Jeff Sapisi in Eden Prairie. Hey, Mary Kay, are there still personnel gaps that the Browns need to fill before training camp? And also, do you foresee more starters playing in preseason than under Kevin Stefanski?
Yes, I do see more starters playing in preseason. I think that we're probably going to end up seeing Deshaun Watson and Shador Sanders playing in preseason. I don't know if I want to say a significant amount, but I do think that they're going to see some live competition so that they can actually make a wise decision based on live action, a live rush, pads, getting hit, not getting game planned for, but maybe getting hit, having somebody in your face, trying to get the ball off. I think they want to see that. So I do think that the veterans will play more. And if you're going to play your quarterbacks, you've got to protect them with your starting offensive line, and you've got to give them the weapons. So I do think that we will see that. Of course, they'll get plenty of action and work against the Buffalo Bills in 2 joint practices leading up to the second preseason game. So I for sure think that we will see that. And of course, I talked so long that I forgot the first part of the question. And I was determined not to forget the first part of the question.
It was, are there areas, it was basically, are there areas where you see holes on the roster
Oh,
still?
there we
Or
go.
where they
Yes.
could bulk up, something like that.
You know, there aren't there are not a ton of those areas where you see obvious glaring holes, but one place that I've said, and I've been saying this for a while, is I always think that you can go out there and find another edge rusher for that rotation. And we know that they had signed AJ Epineza from the Bills, didn't work out. He failed his physical. Um, but I think you can still go find another sort of number 3, number 4 edge for your rotation there. Uh, I don't know. Maybe you can also pick up another cornerback along the way. That could be something you might want to do. And then what else? They have a surplus at receiver. I just wrote about that today. I mean, now they are at the point where, I mean, what are you going to do with Cedric Tillman, right? I mean, when it comes time after training camp is over and you have to make your roster decisions, I think he's somebody that we can look at and say, you know, they might try to move him. But as far as adding other things, maybe a backup running back, another sort of workhorse back if someone shakes free in that department. And perhaps they have plenty of bodies at tight end right now. So I don't know that they feel like they need another tight end at this point. I think that's probably pretty much the number one thing I would be going for would be another edge rusher.
Yeah, I think you hit on the big ones. I think edge rusher, I mean, they're counting really heavily right now on Alex, right? Isaiah McGuire, Julian Okwara. They're really counting heavily on those guys. Adding one more body to that mix, I think would be good.
Mhm.
Running back, I'm actually glad you mentioned that because I think that's one where I think they can hold it together if Quinshawn Judkins were to go down. But how much, I guess it would depend for how long it was, right? Like I think Rocket Sanders could probably be a workhorse type back for a few weeks. I still kind of like Dylan Sampson as more of that gadgety third down guy, like kind of keep him in that role regardless. So yeah, I think running back is one that's kind of under the radar, but like, just add one more guy, even if it's on waiver claim day or something like that, which is when they got Rocket. So that would be one. And I mentioned it, corner, like you can never have enough corners. I know that they're probably going to use a third safety more in nickel, but I'm Andrew Berry thinks like this, you think like this, I think like this. You can never have enough cornerbacks because guys get hurt. It's a position that you might need somebody to go in there. Even if a guy just misses a few snaps. And look, we do know Denzel Ward has missed games and has left games, so that's kind of the one knock on him is there are some injury issues with him. So there might be some weeks where you need to kind of figure it out without Denzel Ward. So if you can add some more depth there, I think that's a good thing. But that's really kind of what it is. It's mostly just you kind of know who most of your top line guys are. It's mostly just adding depth in areas.
I think so. I think that the other area that I would be very curious to see if they do something about would be, I wonder if the makeup of the quarterback room is going to remain intact. Now, they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks and maybe put one on the practice squad. And I think if the season started tomorrow, it would be Dylan would be your third, and you'd be trying to see if you can get Talon onto your practice squad. I'm very curious to see how that's going to shake out, because if you think that you want to use Talon, then you have to put him on your 53. So I don't know how that's all going to go at this point. And then, can you get something for Dylan Gabriel? And if you get something for Dylan Gabriel, then do you add someone else? So I think there could still be a little bit of movement perhaps in the quarterback room.
Yeah, Talon's going to be interesting because I think a lot of it will depend on those preseason games. Like if he looks really good in the preseason, then it gets a lot harder to kind of sneak him through waivers. If he struggles or whatever, then maybe you can do that to get him onto the practice squad initially. But a lot of that might just come down to how he looks in the preseason and sort of how they feel about him once they get through this. We didn't see him take any team reps at all during when we were there in the offseason program. So it's very much a 2-man show at that position. We didn't even see that much of Dylan Gabriel. Although I will say Dylan did make a couple of nice throws. So,
Yeah,
good for him. What
he did.
little we saw of him, he made a couple of nice throws.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Go
actually,
ahead.
I did see Talon take a couple of
Oh, did you?
snaps.
Okay.
Yeah, with the starters, actually, when he was on the same side of the field as, I think it was Shador. He,
Okay. So
he,
when they two spotted.
yeah, when they two
Okay.
spotted, he got up there and he actually had the first team starting supporting cast for at least a couple snaps that I saw over the course of the 3 days. So, um, they do need to do that. I mean, if they think that they want to use him for, short yardage situations, goal line situations, and other things like that, then, you have to see if he's going to be ready for that.
Okay, let's get to this question about the quarterbacks. It comes from Christian and Hudson. Hey, Mary Kay, the old saying is that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. Is that where the Browns are going into this season? And if Deshaun Watson isn't clearly better than Sanders, aren't the Browns compelled to start Sanders so they know what they've got prior to next offseason?
I think a case could be made for that. I think a case can be made. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon Deshaun Watson to separate himself in that way and make it impossible for them to keep him off the field. Because if it's really close, I think the tie could possibly go to the young guy. I really do. Because as our texter just pointed out, wouldn't you want to see what you have in Shador as opposed to a veteran quarterback who doesn't really necessarily have a future with you or might not have a future with you? So, um, so yeah, I could see that, but I think Deshaun is really going to have to take the bull by the horns if he wants this job, because I think there's going to be a groundswell of support for Shador externally and internally, and sometimes those things can take on a life of their own. They also have to deal with the inevitable fan reaction at Huntington Bank Field. And I do think that he will play in those 2 games. In the second preseason game against the Bills, I mean, a lot of times they don't play those guys in the game because they just practiced against the team. Kevin never played the starters against each other when they would practice against the Eagles in the preseason game or even the Vikings. But I don't know. I think there's a world in which Todd might want to see Deshaun in live action and in that stadium with those home fans and how they respond to him. So we'll have to see how that goes. But but I do think that there is a world in which they will throw everything into the hopper. And if Deshaun's not head and shoulders above Shador in most key categories, they might skew young.
Well, yeah, and it's something we've talked about on here. I mean, if you gave everybody in that building, I think, truth serum and said, "What's the best outcome here for this next whatever however many months at quarterback?" It's Shador Sanders seizes that job and shows you he's your future because then you've got a guy with 2 years left on a fifth round rookie deal. You know who your quarterback is now going into next offseason. So now you can use all these draft assets elsewhere. You don't have to draft a guy and start that development curve with him from zero. Like there's a lot of, I've even joked with people like if this were the NBA, like Shador Sanders would be your starting quarterback because that's how they do things when you're kind of one of those teams that's still sort of rebuilding a little bit in the NBA. But in the NFL, you do have to make him earn it. Like you've got to make him like the easiest path forward, obviously, would be Shador Sanders seeing what you have in him. But you can't just hand that to him. You have to like the reasons you start him need to be because he earned it on the field, not because, in theory it would be better to see what you have in him or he'd be the more popular choice. It's got to be because he's the better player on the field. And along those lines, I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and especially last week at minicamp, is he has certainly closed that gap to the point where it is a toss up at this point. So maybe to Christian and Hudson's point, that if that's ultimately the tiebreaker, maybe we're getting closer and closer to where that tiebreaker is going to be used.
Yeah, it's really tough to say because we are looking at fool's gold right now. We have seen OTA warriors. We have seen preseason game warriors, right? And you can get lulled into this false sense of security that you have a winning quarterback on your hands, even in those preseason games. And sometimes it looks really good and really exciting. And I think those things are going to happen in these preseason games. I think there are going to be moments where it looks like, wow, this guy's really got it or this guy's really got it. And then you get into a real game. And when the game planning starts and when the fur is flying and the rush is on and the decisions have to be made in split seconds and the ball has to be on the money in split seconds, that's when you're going to find out what you really have. The Cleveland Browns are not going to know who gives them the best chance to win a football game until the regular season starts. That is just reality. And they're going to be mostly guessing until that point. And they're just going to have to hope that they guess right.
Well, and the challenge is this competition is not going to fly under the radar. Like we know that. I mean, a year ago, Shador Sanders played a great preseason game against Carolina, and there was a Nike ad that came out as soon as that game was over. Like there's no normalcy to this quarterback competition. It's not something that you're just going to be able to conduct in the background somewhere while everyone else is playing their preseason games. This quarterback competition is going to be the focus of it's going to be a topic. And when the Browns play a preseason game, everybody's going to be paying attention to it because of Shador Sanders. So, Todd and this organization are going to have to fight a little bit against letting that outside noise. And I think they're good at this, but letting that outside noise kind of drive their decision making one way or another.
I know it's going to be hard because, uh, again, the Shador noise is louder than almost any other quarterback noise we've been around or encountered. Johnny Manziel, that was big noise. Baker Mayfield, same thing, but nothing quite like this because there's the added social media element that is just way bigger than it used to be. And so the Shador stuff just immediately goes viral, takes, as you found out, as you discovered over the weekend with your Shador Mike Hall bat tweet. My goodness, what are you up to? 8 million? Did it get to 8 million yet?
I don't know. I haven't checked. I'll
Oh,
do it here in real time on the pod. Let's see.
wow.
Um,
8
hold on.
million
I gotta
views.
I gotta find it.
That's a lot
Um,
of views. But that's the power of of social media, and that's the power of Shador Sanders. And sometimes those things do have a tendency to get so big that they do influence decisions, whether people want to admit it or not. And I think it's just something we're going to have to keep an eye on, because it's just a phenomenon that most teams are not dealing with, and this team really hasn't dealt with to this extent.
And it's from both sides too. I did find it. It's at 7.8. So yeah,
7.8.
for a stupid bat down in practice. But I
Yeah.
think what that speaks to is it's not just the Shador fans who run with this stuff. It's the people who maybe don't like Shador, or just kind of know like anything Shador related is going to be, it's going to get eyeballs. Or if I can make Shador look, they aggregate that tweet, for example, and it's like, ha ha ha, look at Shador. They know that'll get eyeballs. Like, so it's not just the Shador fans who amplify things. It's the people who want to get those eyeballs from when Shador does, again, something as ultimately innocuous as having a ball batted down in practice. I know I'm saying that after I got a tweet from that got 7.8 million views, but that wasn't my intention. My intention wasn't this like, ha ha ha, look at Shador. It was just, I don't know. I tweeted the play and it took off. Like there was no, but the reason that happens is because you have people on both sides of it that just want to make their point, I guess.
Make their point and make their buck. A
Right.
lot of people on social media, uh, they will create Shador content because they make money off of Shador. Not only does Shador make money and his family, they make money off of Shador, but a lot of other people do too. A lot of other people do too. And they clamor for Shador content. So it just kind of mushrooms and goes viral and it grows, and everybody wants a piece of the action. There were people retweeting your tweet that, if we were reading this right, and I don't know if we have this right, but it seemed like they were even getting 2.6 million views on their
Yeah.
repost
Yeah.
of your tweet. So if you add it all up, I mean, that thing had just a ripple effect of impact. But that's what Shador brings. That's what he brings. And who knows? I mean, maybe the Browns themselves will say, "Hey, we've got lightning in a bottle here. What are we doing? Maybe we need to just let it rip and see what happens," right? I mean, you don't know. I mean, I would think that Todd Monken would base his decision solely and strictly on football. Who is going to give me the best chance to win a game? Who's going to go out there and function the best and put the most points on the board? That's what he should be basing it on, and I think that's what he will base it on. But as we have been saying, if it's very, very close, if it's almost a photo finish, then I think you're going to go with the young guy who could possibly be your future.
Well, and just to take it back to football, I do think, I agree with our texter here. I do think, like, if we're talking about a competition that is neck and neck, I do think that's probably the right path forward, is
Mhm.
find out about the young guy first. And you'll probably get a chance to get a look at Deshaun Watson. We know, like, these guys, it's not just Cleveland, it's everywhere. Quarterbacks get hurt. And so you'll probably get a chance to see Deshaun Watson at some point if you want to. Um, or maybe Shador will struggle and you've got to make a change. I don't know. But I do think, like, if it's close, that is probably the best path forward, is to at least see what you've got in this 24-year-old who's got 2 years left after this year on a fifth round rookie deal. Like, that's gold if it works out. Now, I don't know that it will, but I think if things are neck and neck, that's probably the side they should err on. But he's got to earn it. Like, he's got to show that he's checked those boxes that Todd Monken laid out, even on the day we left minicamp, about, decision making, not having negative plays, things like that. He's got to show that he's cleaned that stuff up.
Right. And here's another thing that I don't know that we have discussed this very much on this pod yet or in a HMK. I've thought about this. Uh, the Browns would like to see Deshaun Watson have a little bit of success and maybe see what he could have been when he was healthy, and perhaps get a little return on their enormous investment, right? Their $230 million investment. But what if, what if there was a way to create some goodwill for Deshaun organically. Let's say that Shador goes out there and starts a few games and it doesn't maybe go as well as they hope that it will. Then the fans might actually be welcoming of Deshaun, or maybe more so than they would have been if you start Deshaun and you've got home fans clamoring for, chanting for, cheering for Shador. That's going to be a tough environment to operate in for Deshaun. But if you let it play out a little bit with Shador, and it looks like maybe he needs a little bit more seasoning and needs a little bit more time, then people might be a little bit more up for the Deshaun experience. What do you think of that, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way for Deshaun, because then at least it puts Shador out there and then he either sinks or swims. And so, and if it's sink, then okay. They gave Shador that opportunity. Now they're going to see what Deshaun has left. I think that's probably the best outcome for Deshaun Watson too, if he's going to play this year, is to come in as the second guy as opposed to starting as the first guy. Because I don't know, let's say those first 2 weeks just kind of go like meh with Deshaun as the starter, but maybe they go 1-1 and the offense moves and they're scoring some points, but it's still kind of like, I don't know. It is going to be a tough environment coming home for week 3 for him. So yeah, I do think there's something to the idea of Shador going first, and then he either keeps the job or then you hand it over to Deshaun Watson. And we also haven't talked a lot about what it looks like if Deshaun wins the job and looks okay. Like if he is a top 15, 16 quarterback in the league, what does that look like after this year? I mean, there is still, does he sign that Sam Darnold contract? Like 3 years, $100 million. I know that's a shocking number to people, but that's a bargain for a starting quarterback in the league at this point. So especially if you just paid a guy $230 million, but like, does he get a short-term contract like that, here if he plays well? So, I mean, I do think there is certainly a much shorter future if Deshaun Watson plays well, but I think that's part of the discussion here too, is what does it look like if we get to the end of this season and it's like, yeah, you know what? Deshaun's still got something left.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard Andrew Berry say several times now that if something like that happens, they would be open to re-signing him. He just said it again on the radio last week. So they would definitely be open to that. And if Deshaun Watson were the healthy version of himself and he had the right system and the right supporting cast, there really would be no reason why he can't play at a high level for another 6 or 7 years, right? I mean, we're seeing plenty of quarterbacks play well up until they're 37 and 38 years old. And it could happen, but he would have to be healthy for that to happen. And what we don't know yet is, in the heat of the moment, how is the arm going to hold up? How is the leg going to hold up? He's got 3 surgeries that he's coming off of. And I thought towards the end of minicamp, he kind of, tapered off a little bit. It wasn't as strong as it was in the beginning. And so I think we have to keep an eye on that. I mean, if his arm looks on point and good, and he still has his mobility, then I think he can be a winning quarterback in the NFL. But we don't know the answer to those questions yet.
All right. Well, we're going to have lots of time to talk about them. We got 6 weeks here till training camp. And then, of course, this battle is going to continue into camp. All those questions came from our Football Insider subscribers. It's cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved there. Also, find us on any of your socials. Look for Orange or Brown Talk. Give us a like or a follow. And find our YouTube channel. It's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.